I saw that 4 Democrats crossed over for the War Powers Resolution. Wasn't really all that surprising in my humble opinion. I think at this point it's like if we're all shocked that Democrats are going to keep like completely shitting the bed, I feel like it's like why would we be shocked about that? I'm talking to Tom over here on Substack, and to everybody who is joining me on TikTok and on YouTube. Thank you all so much. Super appreciate it. This is the first time I've ever had to simulcast in this very weird way. And also to the oh god, see, this is my all right, there we go. Hopefully my audio is not too fucking bad. Sorry everybody. This is an extremely chaotic operation I'm having to run here. Just to keep the audio even somewhat passable. Jack says yo, Jules says hi. Hi Jules, hi Jack. Very nice to see you guys. Everybody, I'm going to try my best to not repeat the mistake that I made a little while ago, which was specifically where I ended up just talking to my TikTok audience only. And then I never got around to the remarks that I prepared for all of you. And so if you have joined me here on TikTok, I want to say I may ignore you. Just letting you know. Adam Wenberg on Substack says, howdy. Howdy to you, Adam. And then also Schmutz, hello again. Schmutz is one of my paid subs on Substack, and I really appreciate him joining me here again. But everybody, I actually think that it's worth telling you all here on TikTok that maybe you found me, or maybe you found me here on Substack because of my dispatches regarding Minneapolis. And that's totally fair because that was some of the best reporting I've done on any platform. And in recent times, I've kind of stopped doing it to the same degree that I think a lot of you, especially on TikTok, really want me to. And I just want to acknowledge a little bit of what has happened here. And Tom, I agree with you, by the way, on Substack, which is the fact that there are only 4 Democrats who came out for the War Powers Resolution means that there's a lot more. I completely agree with that. But I want to just acknowledge that part of what happened with my reporting on Minneapolis was that some of my sources got really burned out and stopped talking with me, which is fine. I mean, it happens. And the other thing is that one of my sources was picked up and has not come home. And then another one of my sources was picked up and did come home and then become very, very afraid of talking with me. And so that really put the kibosh in my ability to do the reporting at the same scale that I was previously doing. And I have been trying for the last little bit to break back into the scene and to do that reporting at scale again. But honestly, it's just been a little bit slow going because in the meantime, I've also been trying to gather my own research regarding the report I have written for all of you tonight, which is what I'm going to read here in a second. Now, this report is my attempt to kind of repivot my channels all back to the central point that I want them to exist on, which is investigating the intersection between big tech, the surveillance state that they have created, and the government as they try very, very hard to make sure that none of us, whether they are in Minneapolis or if they're in Maine or if they're in the Carolinas or they're in Washington, D.C. or in California, can talk to each other about what is happening and how to protect ourselves. And I think what I have accumulated here is a good report about what's happened in 2026 by itself. This is all trying to make sense of about the last 60-ish days about all of the different acquisitions, the contracts, all of the weird shit that's happening right now with ICE. And for those of you on Substack who are used to me not self-censoring, I'm sorry, but because I am simulcasting to TikTok and YouTube, I absolutely have to now. And so there's going to be some moments where I use acronyms where maybe otherwise I wouldn't. And I just want to let you all know that. That way I am not doing you a disservice. And to Kaylin Michelle on TikTok, who asked if I lived in Chicago, no, I don't. But I appreciate that you think that I would because of my vibe. That's actually very, very funny. Without further ado, though, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to read my remarks now. And my remarks are, I think, well worth your time to listen to. And I'm just going to let you know that if you want to read these remarks in full, I will post them on my Substack after this. I really encourage all of you who are watching on YouTube and on TikTok to please go and follow me there because that's where I can do my most unfiltered reporting on everything that's happening, whether or not we're talking about the war in Iran or Democrats caving, as my Substack audience is trying to talk to me about, or if we talk about this. So just let's just get into it. So I stop all this throat clearing. Um, okay, in early 2026, a man was driving through Southern California and he noticed an abandoned trailer parked along a state highway. And so he stopped, and inside of it was a license plate reader. The Electronic Frontier Foundation investigated this and found that over 40 of these devices deployed by the Border Patrol and the Drug Enforcement Administration along highways in the southern part of the state existed. And the cameras had been concealed inside of things like abandoned trailers, construction barrels, speed limit signs, and I think very cynically and funny, artificial saguaro cacti. Now, the California Department of Transportation had been granting federal agencies, highway right-of-way permits to install these things since 2015. And according to DHS's own documents, the network captures license plate numbers, vehicle make and model, GPS coordinates, and facial images of vehicle occupants. We're going to put a pin in that. Now, all of that feeds into a predictive intelligence system that algorithmically flags what the government calls, quote, suspicious travel patterns. The markup published this investigation on March 6, 2026. By the way, if you don't read the markup, you absolutely should. That trailer they found had been sitting on the side of that California highway for years, for many years. And nobody knew what was inside of it until they checked. And I think that this little story is the epitome of the enforcement apparatus that we currently sit in right now in America, which is that there is this entire infrastructure that is built to be invisible so that by the time that anybody looks inside, the system is already operational against the very people that it is targeting. Now, the day before the markups report on March 5th, so this is on Thursday, NPR confirmed that ICE has used its mobile Fortify facial recognition app on deportation targets and U.S. citizens alike more than 100,000 times since May of 2025 without completing the legally required privacy impact assessments to do so. The day before that report, Wired published a comprehensive accounting of federal contracting data that showed that ICE and CBP have spent at least $515 million on products from Microsoft, Amazon, Google, and Palantir since 2023. Microsoft's Azure cloud platform now runs ICE's Office of Chief Information Officer, its Office of Principal Legal Advisor, and its Homeland Security Investigations Technical Operations Team. ICE also uses Microsoft Dynamics 365 for a program called Swift that automates agency tasks. Now, the day before that report, 404 Media obtained an internal DHS document that confirmed for the first time that Customs and Border Patrol purchases location data that is generated by the online advertising industry's real-time bidding system. And what that means is that every time an ad loads on your phone, you don't have to click it. Every time that it loads on your phone, your location is recorded and then CBP buys that data. So we know now that the surveillance apparatus is already running at scale. It's already pointed at citizens who have committed no crime, and it is powered by technology companies that are posting record earnings. So the infrastructure is already invisible, and so we have to now ask ourselves, how did we get here? Well, this is the procurement sprint that has happened for the last year. So the surveillance tools that are operating in the field right now were contracted, weeks and weeks and weeks earlier. On January 7th, the Electronic Frontier Foundation documented what it called ICE's, quote, surveillance shopping spree, which was a burst of procurement enabled by an expanded $28.5 billion annual budget. Now, ICE secured an $11 million contract renewal with Cellebrite for device tracking hardware, a $3 million deal with Magnet Forensics for additional phone unlocking tools, and a $5 million contract with PenLink for access to, quote, WebLock and Tangles, which are software platforms that are capable of tracking the real-time locations of millions of mobile phones through commercial data brokers. ICE also reactivated a $2 million contract with Paragon Solutions, which is an Israeli spyware manufacturer whose graphite product can harvest messages from encrypted apps like Signal and WhatsApp by sending a single message to a target's phone number. The Biden administration had placed that contract on hold in 2023 under an executive order that restricted commercial spyware associated with human rights violations abroad. And of course, Trump just undid that. Well, the next day after the Frontier Foundation's report, the Trump administration lifted the stop work order, right? And on that same day that he lifted the order, so this is on January 8th now, okay, uh, 404 Media obtained internal material describing Penlink's weblog system, and it allowed ICE to draw a digital fence around a specific geographic area and monitor every phone within it, tracking device movements from workplace to home. An internal ICE legal analysis shared with the outlet stated that this commercial location data can be queried without a warrant. 7 days later, on January 15th of this year, 404 Media published a story that I think really should have reordered the entire national conversation about immigration enforcement. And that is that the outlet obtained internal ICE material and sworn agent testimony revealing a Palantir application called ELITE, which stands for Enhanced Leads Identification and Targeting for Enforcement. You actually probably heard about this. ELITE populates maps with potential deportation targets, and then it generates individual dossiers on each person and assigns what the system calls address confidence scores, which are numerical ratings like 98.95 out of 100 or 77.25 out of 100, which represent the algorithm's estimate of where a person can be found. Now, under oath, an ICE agent described it as something like Google Maps for finding deportable people. The app draws from DHS databases and critically from Health and Human Services Medicaid records shared under data sharing agreements. 2 weeks after that, on January 30th, 404 Media published a retyped version of the ELITE user guide, which revealed that during special operations targeting groups of predefined aliens, the system's normal safeguards can just be turned off. So, to make sure we all understand what this is, like ELITE is an automated target generation system, and the human being with the badge is downstream of the algorithm's recommendations, which it is the recommendation is it's telling them who to find and then like why they should be targeted, and then the agent drives to that dot that the algorithm shows them. So what's especially heinous about that, okay, is that the financial scaffolding to enable all this went up at the same time that all this technology was like first kind of being dreamed up. So on January 27th of this year, Forbes reported that between March and November of 2025 of last year, ICE ordered $38 million in Microsoft software through Dell Federal Systems and made a $25 million purchase of Amazon Web Services cloud systems. CBP separately purchased $38 million in Microsoft licenses and nearly $39 million in AWS services, which are record cloud purchases for immigration enforcement. Leaked internal files obtained by The Guardian also showed that ICE more than tripled its data storage on Microsoft Azure from 400 terabytes in July of last year to 1,400 terabytes to January of this year, using Microsoft's AI tools to search and analyze images and videos that they store within those platforms. On February 1st of this year, the Tech Policy Press analyzed the latest DHS AI inventory, which itself was released on January 28th, and it showed a 40% increase in deployed or developing AI use cases across the department. ICE alone had added 24 new applications spanning from Palantir's ELITE to Mobile Fortify for biometric matching to Nexus Explore for object recognition in social media to a predictive risk model that's called Hurricane Score and to a $3.5 million contract with Clearview AI to scour public internet images for facial matches. I'm going to take some water real quick. How are you guys liking this, by the way? You guys enjoying the essay? I hope so. If you like it, please give this live a thumbs up. 10 days later, on February 11th of this year, Wired reported the CBP signed its own separate $225,000 deal with Clearview AI, which is for 15 software licenses for tactical targeting and strategic counter-network analysis, which is drawing on a database of over 60 billion publicly available images. Now, what did that mean in practice? It meant that ICE agents were now on the street using Mobile Fortify to photograph bystanders and protesters, which we all saw them do. DHS FOIA records revealed that photos are stored up for 15 years per this contract. And by the way, there is no opt-out of this at all. The capstone came on February 19th when Wired reported that DHS had signed a $1 billion blanket purchase agreement with Palantir in a 5-year deal that allowed every DHS agency to purchase Palantir software without competitive bidding. Wired's reporting showed an internal email from Palantir CTO Akash Jain acknowledging, quote, increased concern both externally and internally around our existing work with ICE, blah, 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 and calling on, quote, committed hobbits to return this momentum into mission outcomes. Because, these people are just fucking nerds. These people are just absolute nerds. They are just totally totally, just dorkish. The next day, Wired reported that DHS issued a request for information to build a single unified biometric search engine, which would act as one centralized platform where personnel across CBP, ICE, USCIS, TSA, and Secret Service could simultaneously search faces, fingerprints, and iris scans for watchlisting, detention, and removal operations. So that's the technology that we're all talking about. And at the same time that all that tech was getting stood up, hiring was happening at the same time. Now, you all know the number. I know the number, which is 3,000. That's the amount of people that the federal government has tasked its officers with arresting every day in pursuit of Trump's deportation agenda. Now, that takes a shit ton of bodies, and ICE knows that. That's why it was no surprise when on January 30th, Fox News reported that ICE more than doubled its number of officers and agents from 10,000 to 22,000 in what DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin said took just about 4 months, which is crazy fast. That's a fuck ton of hiring in that amount of time. So we have to think about, what does that mean for training? Well, we don't have to imagine it. Let's just compare the shoulds from the actuals, right? Like, the pipeline for new enforcement and removal operations officer is supposed to run for 16 weeks. And DHS said in response to this huge public influx of officers that they compressed that to 8 weeks. Okay, that's awful. But I mean, okay, like 8 weeks of training, that's, in some cases, that's more than fucking cops get. But Al Jazeera reporting on January 13th found multiple sources who could confirm for them that the real number of training days that ICE officers get for these ERO operations, enforcement removal, is 47 days. And some people said that the number 47 came because Trump is the 47th president. And so that's what got passed down to them, which is, a meme in and of itself. Now, former DHS Assistant Secretary Juliet Kayyem told NPR that the result of this was agents who are, quote, not getting the training, don't have the time to have judgment, and who are being launched into missions that are hard to describe with a political overlay. AP also reported that the agency cut Spanish language requirements to shave 5 additional weeks off the curriculum, which I think some of you also saw reporting about. And I think we've all seen the ads that have gone out, which said recruitment, the recruitment ads that had the tagline of like, no age cap, join ICE, just despicable stuff. And so we have to ask, like, okay, so you have 47 days to train. What are you doing in 47 days? Well, according to the Lever's January 14th reporting, I mean, a whole lot of combat training. Federal procurement records show that ICE contracted with private security and weapons firms, places like Reticence Group LLC, Path Consulting LLC, and Target Down Group, the last of which is owned by the brother of Congressman Nick LaLota, by the way, to provide firearms and combat training to snipers and special response teams. ICE spent nearly $8 million just since September of 2025 on simulation rounds, junk cars, and sniper training gear. Because, if you're going to deport people, you got to make sure that you can pull a fucking siege of Sarajevo on them, I guess. And just so we all know, the ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Good, he was a 10-year veteran of one of the teams that partook in that training, that like pivoted their training to that. So, just keep that in mind. Now, doubling ICE's own workforce was only the most visible expansion, because the administration was also simultaneously converting the entire federal law enforcement apparatus into an immigration enforcement body. On January 5th, a Senate letter led by Senator Ruben Gallego quantified the redeployment. 23% of the FBI's approximately 13,000 agents are now assigned to immigration enforcement. In the 25 largest field offices, that approaches close to 50%. 80% of ATF special agents have now been reassigned. Over 2,100 DEA agents have been diverted. 6,800 Homeland Security investigators have been directed. Just so you all can like make this real for you, okay, the ATF is on pace for 90% decline in its dealer license revocations work, which is effectively the collapse of federal firearms trafficking enforcement. So that way we can like focus on them trafficking humans. Like it's bananas, okay? And this has been building for a year. Okay. And for 1 year, in 1 year, all this has happened. Okay. Now, in January of 2025, a DHS memo granted immigration enforcement authority to the DEA, ATF, U.S. Marshal Service, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the Postal Inspection Service. And the Texas National Guard even signed a memorandum of understanding with CBP granting its personnel immigration arrest powers. And this tracks when you consider the cascade that we've all lived through of the 287G, which, if you don't know, is a rule that can be put in place which delegates federal immigration enforcement authority to local police. Now, in December of 2024, 135 local law enforcement agencies participated in 287G. As of yesterday, March 6, 2026, that number is 1,504. 1,504. active memorandums of agreement across 39 states and 2 U.S. territories. And the ACLU documented just a few days ago on March 2nd that the expansion now includes agencies that aren't law enforcement bodies, like in any traditional sense, okay? The Louisiana State Fire Marshal's Office is in a 287G. The Louisiana Wildlife and Fisheries is in a 287G. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection is now in a 287G. And of course, there's money beneath all of that. The ACLU projected on February 26th of this year that ICE will distribute between $1.4 billion and $2 billion to local law enforcement through 287G agreements in 2026 alone. If the agencies keep signing up, 2027 funding could be as high as $3.5 billion, supporting 31,000 deputized officers. So we have 22,000 official ICE officers, but they are trying to get 31,000 deputized officers. I mean, just like literally like a standing fucking army. I cannot stress it. Like we are talking about a militia, right? Sorry, I have to take another drink of water because I'm ranting and raving so much. Now, I hope that it also is clear to you. Once a sheriff's department builds its annual budget around ICE money, the political incentive to then withdraw that money evaporates entirely. So deputization itself becomes a structural component of police work. The Migration Policy Institute explained the logic in a report really recently. I think is good, which is that, okay, so since at least 2015, they say the vast majority of ICE arrests have come from custodial arrests at local jails, which is about 840,000, compared with 437,000 at-large arrests. Now, Tom Homan has said publicly that a custodial arrest takes 2 officers while an at-large arrest requires 10. Sanctuary policies blunted deportation during Trump's first term precisely because they severed ICE's access to the easy arrests, the custodial arrests. The 287G explosion reopens that pipeline by funding local agencies to do the intake work themselves. And while all that was being built out in public, mind you, because this is all like mostly publicly available to find, Wired reported on February 10th that ICE and DHS had been quietly expanding ICE's physical office presence as well across the country, with more than 150 leases and expansions, with new facilities in nearly every single state. Wait. What did you say? Sorry, somebody said, who's drinking Golden Dome? What the fuck are you talking about? It's so interesting. Sorry, everybody. One of my TikTokers just said something really, really funny. DHS asked the General Services Administration to disregard usual procurement procedures and hide lease listings, citing, quote, national security concerns. Many of the new offices sit near elementary schools, medical offices, and places of worship. So, that's its own kind of fucked up. Now, ICE Acting Director Todd Lyons told the Vera Institute on March 3rd, just this week, what the system is designed to do. His words were, make it like Amazon Prime, but with human beings. And I do not think that he was speaking metaphorically at all. Wired, through metadata analysis of planning documents published on February 20th of this year, showed that ICE intends to activate all new facilities by November 30th of this year. The design is a sort of hub and spoke model where 8 mega detention facilities would hold 7,000 to 10,000 people per facility up to 60 days. Now, of course, we know ICE just lies about how long they keep people all the time. So like when we say 60 days, I mean, this is complete hogwash. It's much likelier that it'll be longer than that. And on March 6th, so again, yesterday, NBC News reported that the goal is to increase total detention capacity across the United States from the current, which is around 70,000 beds, to 160,000 beds by the end of this year. 2 DHS contractors told reporters that housing more than 1,500 people in any single facility, by the way, is risky. And most of these facilities are supposed to be many times the size of that. And just so you know, they're accounting for almost $40 billion in spend to do this. And somebody asked if I've ever thought about cosplaying Megamind. No, I ought to, though. Now, actually, I want to talk about those warehouses that we're going to spend $40 billion on, because the warehouses that are being purchased at prices that I think make the word procurement just sound obscene. Like, okay, USA Today documented yesterday that DHS paid $129 million for one warehouse in New Jersey that was actually assessed at a value of $62 million. In Hamburg, Pennsylvania, they paid $87 million for a warehouse that sold in 2024 for $57 million. In Social Circle, Georgia, they paid $128 million for a warehouse that was assessed at $30 million. How do you spend that fast without anyone stopping you? Easy. You use Trump's January 2025 border emergency declaration, because that allows ICE to bypass competitive bidding entirely. The Brennan Center for Justice reported on February 24th of this year that ICE awarded Core Civic a 6-month no-bid contract to activate a 1,033-bed former federal prison in Leavenworth, Kansas, later extended to 24 months at approximately $60 million annually. A separate no-bid 15-year contract with Geo Group, the private prison company, worth $1 billion, covers Delaney Hall, which is a 1,000-bed facility in New Jersey. ACLU FOIA litigation had its results published on January 29th of this year, forced the release of documents showing that ICE is considering 7 additional detention facilities in Virginia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania, some operated by entities named Batiste Group and Homelands USA, which I think a lot of you have seen reporting on here on TikTok. At the same time that all these warehouses are being built, by the way, the transportation infrastructure was scaling at the exact same time. On February 19th, the Human Rights First group analyzed ICE air data and found that from January 20th of last year to January 20th of this year, the administration conducted 2,253 deportation flights to 79 countries, which is a 46% increase in flights and a 76% increase in destinations over the prior year. Domestic transfer flights, which are called shuttle flights internally by the agency itself, these are where you move detainees between facilities. They surged 132%, averaging 36 per day by January of this year, compared to 9 a day on average last year. In January alone, 52 shuttle flights departed Minneapolis, tied to Operation Metro Surge. Air Wisconsin Airlines entered the ICE Air charter network after selling 13 aircraft to CSI Aviation, which is ICE's charter broker, running approximately 60 flights in the final 2 weeks of that month. God, I really, 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 really gotta drink more water. Mm. Um, oh gosh. Gosh. By the way, we also know, I wanna just talk to my audience across all my apps real quick. We know this about, Air Ice and about their operations in the air, partially because at Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport, a man named Nick Benson had personally been documenting daily deportation flights. So everyone in my chat, please say thank you to Nick. Please type thank you, Nick Benson, because he's part of the reason that we know any of this. And so of course, all of these, all this infrastructure gets built, but we got to ask, like, what's happening inside of those facilities? Well, we know because the Texas Tribune on February 19th documented 6 deaths in 6 weeks between December and January, 3 at Camp East Montana, the tent encampment at Fort Bliss in El Paso. Geraldo Lunas Campos, a 55-year-old Cuban man, died January 3rd. The El Paso County medical examiner ruled it a homicide, asphyxia while being physically restrained by law enforcement. ICE initially called it suicide and then updated the characterization to spontaneous use of force, as if it was a natural occurrence. 6 detained witnesses said Lunas Campos had begged for asthma medication for days. The federal government attempted to deport those witnesses before they could even testify. Also last month, ProPublica investigated the Dilley Immigration Processing Center, which you all know about. It's a 2,400-bed family facility run by Core Civic that was reopened after Biden ended family detention in 2021. Racy's documented over 700 complaints about insufficient medical care since August of 2025, and 911 call recordings captured emergencies involving toddlers with respiratory issues, pregnant women having seizures, and alleged sexual assaults. According to reporting by the KSAT local station on March 5th, there have been more than 20 emergency calls made at that facility between October of last year and February of this year, most involving children, ages 2 months to 13 years. On January 20th this year, Popular Information reported that ICE halted payments for detainee medical treatment entirely in October of 2025. A week later, on January 27th, Senator John Ossoff released a report documenting 1,037 credible reports of human rights abuses between January 2025 and January of 2026, including pregnant women being shackled while miscarrying, denial of food and water, exposure to extreme temperatures, and imposed sleep deprivation. It is a miracle that we got to know any of this, given that ICE facility inspections dropped by more than a third in the last year. On March 3rd of this year, Senator Dick Durbin cited 32 deaths in ICE custody in 2025, which is the highest in more than 2 decades, with at least 8 more in the first 2 months of 2026. And those are, of course, the only deaths that we know about. Rest in peace, Keith Porter, Renee Good, and Alex Preddy. Now, as of this writing, Camp East Montana is under quarantine for measles. There are 14 active cases I could find any records of. 112 individuals are in isolation. Prior outbreaks of COVID-19 and tuberculosis are on record. And the facility was built and operated by Acquisition Logistics LLC under a $1.24 billion contract. And Immortal Snail, no, I'm reading my own essay. Internal ICE documents suggest, I'm not reading a news article, I'm just reading my own thing. Internal ICE documents suggest the agency has drafted a termination letter, and the population has dropped to of that facility has dropped to roughly 1,500, which is about half of its January peak. On March 6th, yesterday, NBC News reported that ICE is reevaluating that facility's future, but who's to say? Today, March 7th, Akima Global Services employees, the security subcontractor, received an internal message, quote, Camp East Montana will remain open. Oh, also, did you guys know that we use Gitmo? Who here in the chat? Who here in the chat knew that we use fucking Gitmo for immigration enforcement? Because we do. According to reporting out of the Wola local station yesterday on March 6th, the Department of Defense Inspector General report found that 708 migrants had passed through the facility through Gitmo in 2025, with an average stay of 14 days. The Defense Department obligated $60.6 million for, quote, Operation Southern Guard. DHS spent an additional $17.8 million, and that works out to about $75,000 per detained person. And every single military flight to get them to the island averaged a cost of $708,000 that you and I paid for. And, you know, we're kind of getting a little bit to the end here, because we got to at least acknowledge this. Do I have to say it? Okay, I'll say it. The private sector is raking fucking money over this, and you can just see it in the earnings calls. On February 12th of this year, both CoreCivic and Geo Group reported their quarterly earnings, and you kind of need to read them together. Geo Group's net income went from $31.9 million to $254.3 million, an 800% increase. CEO George Zoli called 2025 the most successful period for new business wins in our company's history. The ICE population at GEO facilities reached approximately 24,000, which is the highest that the company has ever recorded, with 6,000 additional idle beds that at full capacity would generate more than $300 million for that company in annual revenue. GEO projects 2026 revenues between $2.9 billion and $3.1 billion. CoreCivic's ICE revenue more than doubled in a single quarter, from $120 million in Q4 of 2024 to $244.7 million in Q4 2025. CEO Patrick Swindle told investors, quote, ICE was our first customer, and it's been our largest customer for over a decade. CoreCivic reported 7,066 available idle beds across 5 facilities and described nearly 13,000 of total storage capacity. The company announced strategic investments in AI under a new chief information digital officer, piloting AI-driven security cameras and monitoring tools that management said could eventually be commercialized. Now, obviously, shame to all these motherfuckers, but you know what really got me when I listened to the earnings calls? The investors on the calls, not the executives. Fuck the executives. I mean, we know that they're ghouls. No, the regular investors are who floored me. CoreCivic's investors on the call expressed frustration that ICE had only detained approximately 70,000 people over the year when they expected 100,000. GEO Group executives then confirmed participation in a massive federal procurement effort seeking 20,000 to 40,000 additional beds, funding for that. Only 70,000 people, and they are not happy. The demand for more detention, of course, then is coming from regular investors on Wall Street. 1 week earlier, by the way, before the earnings calls, on February 5th, The Intercept reported that CoreCivic and GEO Group had spent millions lobbying for legislation that would force banks to provide them loans, because many banks had actually previously denied financing to the private prison industry because of ESG-era pressure, environmental social governance. The new legislation that they are trying to lobby for would override those lending decisions and give the companies fresh capital to build faster. Palantir's own 10K filing, by the way, came a few days after those earnings calls and submitted to the SEC on February 17th the report that net income is $1.6 billion in total revenue of $4.5 billion for fiscal year 2025. The company, by the way, interesting enough, they also relocated from Denver to Aventura, Florida, because they want to distance themselves, where they said they were actually facing a ton of sustained protests over their ICE contracts. And they are now the largest publicly traded company headquartered in Southern Florida with a market capitalization that's almost $400 billion. 2 weeks before the filing of the 10K, CEO Alex Karp had appeared on CNBC and said this. This is a real quote from him. If you are critical of ICE, you should be out there protesting for more Palantir. Our product actually, in its core, requires people to conform with the Fourth Amendment. I wish I made that up. I mean, it's so ghoulish. That same day that Palantir's 10K dropped, the Project on Government Oversight reported that ICE contract spending increased 70% year over year, with nearly 70%, which is 3.8 billion out of 5.4 billion, flowing to the top 10 contractors across almost 700 companies. 2 weeks earlier, on January 29th, Good Jobs First published a data set aggregating contract values against regulatory penalties. Core Civic holds $2.1 billion in ICE contracts alongside $21.3 million in penalties. General Dynamics holds almost $300 million in contracts against $235.1 million in penalties. And then on March 3rd, so just a few days ago, a hacktivist collective operating as the Department of Peace did something so fucking funny. They breached the DHS Office of Industry Partnership, and they released a database of federal procurement records. That data set, hosted by DDoS Secrets, details contracts between DHS, ICE, and 6,700 distinct commercial organizations. The database is currently sitting on the internet right now. You can find it. And it's just waiting for somebody to comb through and identify the ones that are building intake software or biometric tools or facility management systems, whatever, for ICE. As of this writing, no major newsroom has published a forensic audit, so I will be trying my best to do that myself. Who knows? Maybe I'll have a little Dre dossier moment of my own. I don't even know. I do think it's important to say that, like, I think it would be easy, like really easy for people to look at all this and be like, oh, well, this is just all really aggressive immigration enforcement. And I think that's like total bullshit framing. On January 29th, the Washington Post published a comprehensive investigation into ICE's expanded surveillance toolkit, facial recognition, license plate readers, phone location databases, drones, all of it. And the investigation documented that ICE agents have used these tools to monitor anti-ICE protest networks, including U.S. citizens. Now, remember, that was on January 29th. Now, in the following 5 weeks, what's happened? Well, I mean, on February 23rd, Politico reported that two legal observers in Maine, Colleen Fagan and Eleanor Hilton, have filed a class action lawsuit alleging that ICE agents scanned their faces and license plates while they watched enforcement operations from a legal distance and then threatened to place them on a domestic terrorist watch list. Now, DHS said, "Oh well, we don't have a watch list, but like they say we don't maintain a domestic terrorist database, right? But what we do is we monitor threats, assaults, and obstruction of officers." Now, 4 days later, on February 27th, 404 Media reports that ICE agents have been labeling protesters as domestic terrorists in internal databases, which confirms one of the most viral videos from ICE, I think, which is when an ICE agent literally said, "Oh, we'll put you on a list." It's been confirmed. Now, Representative Benny G. Thompson demanded that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, or I guess unemployed woman Kristi Noem, that's really what she is now, define that term. Thompson's office wrote this to her saying, they put the statement out saying, the actions are abhorrent, blatantly unconstitutional, corrosive to the functioning of peaceful society, yada, yada, yada. Well, I mean, at the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, I mean, Noem just said, fuck you, and didn't, refuse to retract any prior statements that she had made, especially in relation to the killing of the U.S. citizens, Renee Good and Alex Preddy, when she said that they were domestic terrorists. The directors of both ICE and CBP have previously testified they did not provide intelligence labeling the victims as terrorists, and Noem said she relied on reports from agents on the ground. Well, video evidence from Preddy's murder clearly contradicts that, and I just want to put the fact of what we saw happen to Alex Preddy next to this fact of them saying they don't have a terrorist watch list, because just a couple days ago on March 5th, The Guardian documented that no ICE deportation officer operating under enforcement and removal operations had died a violent death in the line of duty since the agency was created, not one, okay? But on the same day that the Washington Post had their investigation on January 29th, Byline Times documented Palantir's contracts with the U.S. Army Research Laboratory, which is totaling almost $500 million for research, including social media scraping, geolocation tracking, social network mapping, and AI models to predict when and where protests would occur. The same company that's running ICE's Elite's targeting app, right? This is all Palantir. So when they say, oh, well, we don't have a domestic terrorist watch list and we don't consider these people domestic terrorists, it's that's clearly a lie. This is clearly them just lying to your face and counting on the fact that you're not going to remember that they said that, okay? And this all, in my opinion, puts into focus the reporting from NPR that happened on March 5th, which stated that DHS revoked global entry privileges of Instagram users who posted content that was critical of ICE. So clearly, the contract that ICE has with Palantir to do all this fucking scraping of our social media is vesting its value because they're finding targets before they even get in the country. Now, they're tracking the airwaves. I don't know if I mentioned, they're tracking the airspace too. On January 20th this year, 404 Media reported that the FAA altered a no-fly zone designation originally created for military bases now to apply to DHS units, which ban civilian drone flights within 3,000 feet. That's over half a mile away from ICE operations. The restriction moves with DHS assets, so the no-fly zone appears wherever ICE shows up without advance notice. So if you are flying a drone and ICE happens to drive under you, if they want to, they can immediately take that as a threat on their life. On February 2nd, mind you, CBP flew MQ-9 Predator drones over anti-ICE protests in Los Angeles, totally not to surveil anyone, I'm sure. 2.5 weeks later, on February 15th, The Intercept reported Palantir had been paid nearly $4 million by who? New York City Health and Hospitals to scan patient health notes and optimize Medicaid billing. That's what their actual contract's for. But we know now that a company that is simultaneously embedded in the city hospital system is to scan patient records is also powering ICE's deportation engine that they use Medicaid data for in order to say who they should deport. On March 4th, just a few days ago, approximately 180 Thomson Reuters workers in Eagan, Minnesota, which is a suburb of the Twin Cities, sent a letter to the executives of Reuters asking, "Hey, is the company's database with the company clear? That's who hosts the database. You know, is that good for us to do because it's used by ICE under a 5-year, $23 million contract? Like, is that being used in accordance with our missions and our values as well as in accordance with the law in our nation's constitution?" This is what the workers asked, and I can only imagine what the inquiry, responded with. I'm sure they basically said no, but go back to work. I think also it goes without saying, but it's still worth repeating just so we get it in through our thick skulls. Okay, which is that the legal architecture that could have protected any of it. I mean, it's all fallen to shit. I mean, it's all fake. You know, like Rachel Cohen says this all the time. And if you don't follow Rachel Cohen, I mean, what are you doing? But she says it perfectly, right? The law, like, this is not legal advice, but the law is fake. Okay, because every mechanism that is designed to check ICE is being systematically degraded. Okay, and we're watching it happen right now. On January 8th of this year, DHS issued a directive requiring members of Congress to submit requests 7 days in advance to visit detention facilities. I think you all remember that. A court stayed the directive. Nome secretly reinstated it just through a separate fucking memo. On March 2nd, a few days ago, a federal court had to order access restored a second time. And I don't really think that, fucking Mark Wayne Mullen is going to be like abiding by that. On February 10th, ICE canceled a scheduled briefing with Senator Ron Wyden's office on surveillance technology with no explanation and without any offer to reschedule. On March 5th, 70 Democratic lawmakers wrote the DHS Inspector General demanding investigation into a warrantless pen-linked data purchase, noting that the AG had already found those purchases illegal in 2023, a finding that temporarily shut that program down. And do you know what ICE's response to that ruling was? Anyone want to put a fucking guess in my TikTok chat or my Substack chat? You guys want to guess what ICE said in response to them being like, oh, well, we already made that illegal? ICE just created a no-bid contract to Penlink to get the same capabilities. Great. On the back end, I mean, the immigration courts are collapsing completely, and that's by design. The One Big Beautiful Bill capped immigration judges at 800 despite a backlog requiring multiples of that. That's why the backlog reached 3.38 million active cases as of December of this year. DOJ hired, temporarily anyway, 52 military lawyers as judges. One Army Reserve lawyer, Christopher Day, was removed because he granted asylum at higher rates than his counterparts. Everybody say thank you, Christopher Day, for, I don't know, having a fucking heart. TRAC data showed that only 1.64% of new cases in the first quarter of fiscal year 2026 alleged criminal activity beyond illegal entry. 1.64. Judges completed 57,000 cases in December of 2025, issuing removal orders in like 80% of them. That becomes comprehensible when you learn that only 27% of immigrants have attorneys when they go to these when they go to these trials. 27% of them have legal representation. And I hope you can see, like, can you see the trap that's closing? Do you know what I mean? Because, like, when the judiciary is clogged, detention becomes indefinite by default. And we know that's the case because on January 27th, the Deportation Data Project documented that the rate of individuals released within 60 days of arrest plummeted from 16% to 3%, driving a 21-fold increase in voluntary departures. The DOJ is also constructing new legal theories to expand who can be targeted. On February 24th of this year, ProPublica reported that federal attorneys argue minor nonviolent parental negligence citations constitute child abuse under the 1996 Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigrant Responsibility Act, which permanently disqualifies parents from cancellation of removal. Legal experts have already warned that this strategy will allow DHS to mine the National Child Abuse and Neglect Data System to systematically target thousands of parents immediately. Now, why does that particularly matter? Well, as I'm sure all of you remember, on January 9th, DHS launched Operation Paris in Minnesota to target almost 6,000 refugees. You know what happened on February 18th? USCIS and ICE issued a joint memorandum claiming the authority to arrest and detain any refugee who hasn't obtained a green card within 1 year with no time limit on detention. And do you know how hard it is for refugees to go do that, to get their green card, when the entire immigration court is so backed up with no end in sight and when they're living with the fear every appointment with an immigration official becomes a trap? They are the newest sitting ducks, it seems. And then, I don't know if you guys heard this, but on March 2nd, the Third Circuit ruled in the Mahmoud Khalil case that district courts lack a jurisdiction over constitutional challenges to detention and removal. So what that means, if that reasoning holds, is that courts cannot hear your constitutional argument before you are deported. And the funding that makes all that possible, mind you, operates outside of normal appropriations because the one Big Beautiful Bill Act funding of nearly $180 billion going to this agency runs independently. So when DHS entered a shutdown on February 14th over a lapsed spending bill, only 8% of the workforce was furloughed because 2/3 of that budget ran through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act anyway. Congress's primary leverage is functionally neutered now. Now, at this point, we're 47 minutes in. I know you've all been listening to me for a long time, but I want to end this on something of a hopeful note here because, and there is hope. I'm not saying that to like blow smoke up your ass because people are fighting for like not all to be lost. Like there have been 24,403 habeas corpus petitions that have been filed in federal courts since January of last year, exceeding the combined totals of the 3 previous administrations, which is insane. In February 2026 alone, 8,200 new cases overwhelmed U.S. attorneys' offices to the point where some operate now at 50% capacity. Over 300 federal judges have ruled against the government, ordering the release of detainees or mandating bond hearings. DOJ spokespersons publicly call them rogue judges, but who gives a fuck what they think? Also, on the 287G front about deputizing officers to be immigration enforcement officers, like 11 states banned them. California banned them, Connecticut banned them, Delaware, Illinois, Oregon, Washington, Colorado, New Jersey, like Maine, New Mexico, Maryland. They've all banned them, and some of them Maine, New Mexico, and Maryland banned them this year, like in response to it. Now, on February 17th, Governor Wes Moore, when he banned it, he said, "We will not allow untrained, unqualified, unaccountable agents to deputize our law enforcement officers." Like also on the warehouse front, at least 11 warehouse deals collapsed under community pressure, according to the Vera Institute's March 3rd reporting and the Marshall Project's February 14th reporting. And when I say pressure, by the way, I mean pressure. Like residents in Surprise, Arizona turned out for a 5-hour city council meeting after DHS purchased a $70 million warehouse in their town. That's pretty cool. And some private companies aren't really down with it either. Jim Pattison Developments canceled the sale to DHS in Ashland, Virginia. Majestic Realty refused to sell to DHS in Hutchins, Texas. And elected officials at the state and local level are doing their part as much as they can to disable the construction of new infrastructure as well. Senator Roger Wicker blocked a megacenter in Bahia, Mississippi. A growing number of cities are terminating their flock safety camera contracts over fears that license plate data is being sold to ICE. States including Illinois, Massachusetts, Minnesota, New York, and Washington are blocking ICE from accessing driver license records. Howard County, Maryland passed emergency legislation revoking permits for a nearly complete ICE warehouse in Elk Ridge. And the developer, this is funny, the developer filed a lawsuit claiming almost $22 million in sunk costs. And I hope you all join me in saying, fuck you, developer. We hope you lose. And that's the price of like resistance, right? I mean, it's just, millions in legal exposure for one county that wanted to act. Also, we got to give credit to the laborers, right? Laborers across the country are rising up. In the tech sector, they are. Over 1,000 Google employees demanded an end to the company's ICE contracts. More than 800 workers petitioned CEOs across the tech sector to demand Trump remove ICE from American cities. And today, I think the coolest thing that happened today, worker organizations under the banner of No Tech for Apartheid, representing 700,000 employees from Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, issued a joint statement demanding executives reject Pentagon demands to remove AI safety guardrails and demanding transparency about DHS contracts, including with ICE. And all of that is real. and all of it matters. I just think that the structural problem here is the tempo, because like resistance moves in these like weird organizing cycles, but the infrastructure moves like every day, right? And it moves silently in ways that most people are like never going to look. It moves in procurement awards and contracts and lease agreements, like boring shit. And like by the time that a court rules that a facility can't be built, like ICE is already purchasing 10 more. So you know, whether the rate of obstruction can match the rate of construction, I think that question has an honest answer, but right now the answer is that it can't. Now we know where all this is going, and we know what's coming because they said it in the documents, right? Like they want to activate all of their facilities by November 30th of this year. They want 160,000 people held at one time, a national catastrophe if it is realized. And also at the same time in November, the midterms happen. Now, in February, DHS Deputy Assistant Secretary Heather Honey said that, state election administrators, shouldn't worry. ICE is not going to be present at any polling location. And at the same time, Steve Bannon called on ICE to surround the polls. So who fucking knows? But I think that the question that matters the most, is the thing that comes after the election more than anything, because every capability built for immigration enforcement exists for any purpose for, like, how do I put this? Anything that is being built right now is being built that's kind of agnostic to like any administration in particular, right? Like warehouses that are converted to detention centers don't really convert back. Blanket contracts like don't really expire when a president leaves. Algorithms don't get untrained really. Like all these things happen and then they just stay that way, right? Like powers of the state like surveillance and detention infrastructure are built to be permanent. Unless of course we do something else. So that's my piece, everybody. I hope that you've enjoyed it for all 50 minutes that I was talking. And if you like this kind of reporting and you want to read it directly, straight from the source, I recommend that you come join me on Substack and read my writing as it comes out. Because I spend a fuck ton of time talking about this stuff and trying to make it all work. It'll be available NP from TN. All this will be available later today. I'm going to publish the whole thing on my Substack, and you'll be able to read it there if you want to read it, and also post all my sources. This is like over 150 sources that I've collected over the last 5 or 6 weeks. So definitely very exhausting for sure, but I do it because it needs to be done, and like it needs to keep being fucking synthesized and everything. God, I feel so exhausted from all that. Holy shit, Jesus Christ, dude. Um, yeah, I hope uh I really I really really hope though that you guys enjoyed that, and I hope that it was worth the wait. I know obviously that I have not been doing the sort of dispatch reporting directly from the ground in Minneapolis the way that I used to. But I really, really hope that you guys know that it is not because I didn't want to keep doing it or I got lazy. It was because of sourcing problems. Like I literally just like had issues sourcing the stories at a point. Some people really tapped out, burned out. Some people got picked up. And some people who otherwise were willing to give me the information I needed, they kept giving it to me, but it came at a very, very, very slow drip. And also like there were parts of me too that like needed to have time to like collect this kind of stuff and think about it and to analyze it, and that takes time too. But I'm trying to keep the dispatches coming and at a sustainable rate. That way I don't burn out too. Yeah. Yeah, that's really really all it is though. Um Immortal Snail says, "What do lawsuits and court orders matter if the current admin won't follow the law?" Well, it definitely wastes their human capital's time. Um, oh, guys, I just got my TikTok live flagged for misinformation. Oh, my live was restricted for some audiences. Isn't that crazy? Oh my god, I literally just got I just got a strike. Oh my god. Oh, no. Well, guys, see, Substack, this is why I said that I normally would, self-censor, but, wow, that's crazy, actually. Uh, uh, yeah, I mean, listen, it's listen, I'm not gonna keep saying, the acronym totally pronounced, but, clearly, it did not help my case. Wow, I actually feel, so oh my god, Turtles says, "I know it's girthy." Shut up. What's crazy actually is that, I was informed by some people they would really like me to stop, talking about my hog and things like that, and I think that perhaps it is, for the best. I mean, maybe I'm just, I'm just being too silly or something like that, but it is really, really, really funny, that somebody said it. I know it's girthy. Oh my god. I thought that I was gonna get a strike because of the fact that I have this little stogie on here and because I'm, sipping on a red stripe. But apparently it's just because I said the word ICE. That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. Huh. Huh, 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 huh. Um, yeah, you know what, guys? I have a question. Let's test your reading comprehension. Was there any particular fact in my essay that you heard where you're like, "Wait, what the fuck?" Because I have one for sure as I was writing it, and I'll save mine for last if anybody wants to go first. Also, everybody, I normally don't do this, but I am gonna do it here. I would really appreciate it if some of you guys would go ahead and check out my Substack anyway, because some of the people who are watching me on Substack right now, they are my supporters. They like actually help like sponsor my work, and I'm telling you, sponsorship it matters. It helps me like keep doing this, and it gives me a lot of yes. It's under the same name, Kadeo, and it does help me keep feeling like I have the support behind me to like do this no matter like if I got kicked off of TikTok, because that's like my big fear. My big fear is that like one day I'll wake up my account will just be banned because it's happened. It's quite literally happened to some of my mutuals where they just get like booted off the platform. And like I want people to keep finding this reporting. Like I want to be able to keep doing this reporting and know that it's like gonna get read and supported by someone, even if like this whole thing disappeared, even if like I couldn't reach all 250,000 of you. Um Joe says, "Are you worried that Oracle just knows where you are?" Oh, of course I am. I bet they know the exact room I'm in. I bet that they have a fucking I bet they have a 3D I bet they have a 3D map of my room. I bet they know the exact shape of my bed. Um, Amaze Glenn said, "You talk about Ukraine footage. Have you seen IDF POV?" Yeah, I have. It's awful. Brandon Padilla says, "Here's a little hope core for you, but I live in Idaho and I'm actively looking to turn it blue." Oh, hell yeah, brother. And progress is looking not too bad. Dude, hell yeah, brother. Um, Schmutz on Substack said that the number that I mentioned of the 31,000 is a militia is disturbing. Yeah. Oh my God. Um, Yoda's ray trace ret says Pokemon Go feeds into the Nexus. Yeah. Um, a talker of the wild says, "Are you gonna publish your interview with Cat?" It's published. You can find it on YouTube right now. Um, Let me see here. Plane to a Trees says, "TikTok keeps asking to allow location data." I'm like, "Don't you know already?" Yeah, but like once you press that you agree, I mean, like you lose all ability to like take them to court. You know what I'm saying? That's probably why they want you to do that. Um, Let me see here. Uh, Jolly Green Josh said, "Read my comment if we're married now." Oh, uh, let me see here. Toast on Jelly says, "Cornpop, can you do a quick 16 bar freestyle?" No, I will not do no, I will not do this. I like the fact that I can't rap, actually. Uh, Jonathan Farmer says, "Based out of East Dallas, you can actively see the change." Dude, that's fucking sick, man. That's awesome. I really hope that that is as hopeful as you say. Um, and just so you know, it's not that I like that I can't rap like for any real reason. It's just that like I don't know. I just think that like I don't need to know how to rap. Like, I can enjoy it myself. I can enjoy all the people who are good at it. I don't need to know how to do that shit. Um, Immortal Snail says, "Do you think that?" Hold on, real quick. Let's see here. Do you think that a left-wing candidate for 2028 is possible? Hell yeah, I do. Absolutely, I do. I think that 2026 is going to be the Democrats' version of what Republicans went through in 2010. That's what I think is going to happen. But because of how insane the political reality is here in the United States now, things are going to move way faster. Like, what's going to happen instead of it taking 6 years for it to vest in a campaign cycle, it'll take two. And it will come in the form of progressives, I think personally, wiping the Democrats from underneath themselves through the primaries. And then I think that in the midterms, assuming that the elections happen without any interference, I think what's going to happen is Democrats are going to sweep. Like, I would not be surprised to see like a 20 seat majority in the House. And like, I'm not I'm not being, like, overly hopeful when I say that, I don't think, like, I could easily see it being a bloodbath for Republicans, and in the Senate, I could see them taking back the Senate, and I think that what's gonna matter the most is the House, and I think that when the House gets in, I think that it will be a very interesting mix. I think that you'll have, like, old school progressives like AOC and Ilhan Omar, but then I think you'll have, like, new school, really hardline progressives who are, like, New Deal Democrats at their most right-leaning and, like, actual communists in the left wing. And I don't think they're gonna be down with Hakeem Jeffries. I really don't. So, yeah, I totally think a 2028 left wing, like, I mean, American left wing, like a Dem sock. I could see them. I could easily see them do that. And I will say that I think it'd be really funny though, if we actually get all the way to the midterms and then nothing happens regarding like election interference. And then it comes to pass that Democrats do wipe because I kind of wonder. I wonder if Democrats will actually do it. I wonder if they'll actually try and like convict Trump. That'd be really funny. Be really funny. My bet is no though. I mean, and maybe they would do like a sweetheart deal with him or something, where it'd be like, you have to leave the office and we won't put you in prison. I could see that. They have just the right amount of spinelessness to do some bullshit like that. Um, oh man. Okay, guys. I'm at 1 hour, and I want to know from all of you before I pop off here. Uh, if you enjoyed the live, as always, please leave a rating of 0 corns through 10 corns, like 0 through 10 corns. And yeah, like please tell me if you enjoyed it and what your favorite part of this live was. And if you would like to read all of this essay in its fullest form, I will post it on Substack tomorrow, and you'll be able to read it there in its entirety. And if you want to support my work, it's $5 a month forever. Inflation be damned. I only take home like $3 of that after Substack and taxes. So yeah, if you want to give me $3 a month, if you want to buy me a single cup of coffee every single month, please do. It keeps me going. It actually does. It really helps me a lot. Every single time I see that number tick up, I get very excited. I'm gonna put it that way. And everybody's being extremely nice with all of the corn emojis. Really appreciate that, guys. And thank you, Adam, for saying 10 corns on Substack as well. I really cannot tell you how much I need that support. I need your validation. I mean, granted, I would definitely still do all the reporting, even if all of you hated me, because it's like important. But it's a good thing that you don't, I guess. With that, I think I'm gonna. I think I'm gonna pop off, guys. I'm actually so tired now. Okay, I'll see you guys later. And to my Substack audience, really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.